Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. And of course, this is our first Morning Watch, very first Morning Watch program for 2023. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall, and of course, a blessed 2023 to you. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org. And if you are overseas and on the move, US listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. US listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you are in the UK, 0330-332-6541, or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live in the main and second watches today, understanding the Charter of Rights. For our social media question, we ask, how much do you know about your rights and freedoms as a Jamaican? Share your responses in our Facebook or YouTube Love 101 FM Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp comments and voice notes to 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your comments later on in the program, but first, here's I quote.
Good morning. Today's I quote is an island quote from Jamaica, which says, "Mischief come by the pound and go by the ounce." Explanation in English means mischief makers can stir up a tremendous amount of trouble with only a few words or maybe one action.
And the part about and go by the ounce, I'm trying to figure out that part.
All right, so it said mischief come by the pound, but it goes by the ounce. I'm guessing because ounce is smaller
Yes.
than the pound. I guess that's where the one action comes in.
So the mischief that they make is much greater
Yeah,
than, in other words, it's easier to create the mischief than to get rid of the mischiefs.
I'm
Well,
assuming. Yes, I'm assuming that's
I
what it
see.
means.
Very interesting. Happy New Year. Blessed 2023 to you, Jakal.
Yes, sir. Same to you. Same to you. Happy New Year to you too.
Looking forward to a great year and, of course, looking forward
Yes,
to a great show today. The main
definitely.
watch will be back after this break.
From generation to generation, Jamaicans have depended on J&B Bank to make the pride and joy of providing a safe place for their families possible. Now, with no processing fees and no down payment mortgage options, you can open the door to your own sweet home, a legacy to hand to your next generation. Visit jnbank.com to get pre-approved today. J&B Bank will help you find a way.
You work hard to make Jamaica a first-class destination. Isn't it time you receive the 5-star benefits? Retire smarter with the Tourism Workers Pension Scheme, a portable plan that also provides your family with financial security in case of your untimely death. It's easy, affordable, and accessible online. Retire and relax with the Tourism Workers Pension Scheme. Visit twps.myguardiangroup.com or call 876-927-4105. Guardian Life. Live secure. Live easy.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I am your host, Stokely Marshall. The rights of every Jamaican. They're all clearly laid out in a document called in short, Charter of Rights, which really is what comprises Section 3, or Chapter 3, I should say, Chapter 3 of the Jamaican Constitution, or the Constitution of Jamaica. But how much of it do we know and understand? Well, we have as a guest today to help us understand it, Mr. Wendell Wilkins, attorney at law. Wendell Wilkins, attorney at law. And we also have He's normally on the program as a financial analyst, but today he is a social and financial commentator. Dennis Chung. Good morning, Wendell Wilkins. Good morning, Dennis Chung. How are you both?
Hi,
Good morning.
Thank you.
Morning.
Starting with you, Wendell Wilkins.
Everyone and your listeners.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you both. Starting with you, Mr. Wilkins. In this first watch, we're going to be focusing on the rights to freedom from discrimination on the ground of being male or female, race, place of origin, social class, color, religion, or political opinions, which in essence comprises the non-discrimination clauses in the Charter. And could you help us to unpack this, please, Mr. Wilkins? I was about to call you Dr. Wilkins. Can you please help us to unpack this? I suppose non-discrimination on the grounds of being male or female is pretty clear and obvious. Equality between both sexes. Mr. Wilkins?
Yes, that is correct. And we want to start by fundamentally stating that the Charter of Fundamental Rights is part of our Constitution. And the Constitution is the most supreme law of the land. And therefore, all other laws, when made, must not conflict or be inconsistent with the Constitution. If that happens, then that other law is null and void, bad law, invalid. And the foundation of our democracy is founded and sit on the Constitution.
Yes.
So if you interfere with those fundamental rights that we are going to discuss, some of them, and you have no justification as given by the Constitution, then you will be affecting our democracy and the democratic process. So
if I could just add this here, Mr. Wilkins, these non-discrimination clauses we're going to be discussing in this first watch are captured in section 13(3)(I) of the Charter. Continue, Mr. Wilkins.
Yeah. So one fundamental aspect of our democracy, and that is found in the Constitution, the Charter, is freedom from discrimination because of your being male or female. And therefore, what we are saying practically is that as you go through life as a citizen in Jamaica, you should not suffer in any discriminatory way because you are a female or you're a male.
Yes.
Now, historically, and the studies have shown, the sociologists and the anthropologists and those specialized persons, experts have shown that we live in a male-dominated society still. And therefore, you will find that because of that dominance, the males sometimes get what can be classified as preferences. Preferences, for example, in salary and so forth. And in that regard, you will find that a male employee gets a little more salary reward at the workplace compared to the female. But all of that is changing and changing very significantly. If you look at a span of, say, the last 30 years, you will find that female employees are moving up the ladder, and they are moving up the ladder because of merit, and they are demanding getting equal salary. There is still historically a hangover of discrimination at the workplace in our society. And that is something that will take some time to be rectified as we go forward. And we see signs of it because at educational institutions like the university, you find more females now there and graduated, and therefore out of a need, one has to hire females and treat them with equality, with no discrimination. And that is one aspect you find in terms of discrimination that we wish to discuss.
What about race, place of origin?
Yes, that still is a hangover from the past, from our history of coming out of colonialism and the question of how we esteem or respect persons who are black versus white or brown. And there is some hangover
Color,
societally,
yes.
yes, that is there, And this culture that came up, if you want to call it.
And hair texture, Mr. Wilkins.
Yes, certainly. How your hair is, whether it's long and straight or natty. And remember the browning culture,
And if you have cool skin, what Jamaicans call cool complexion.
right? And browning, that culture that found
And the shape
itself,
of your nose, things like that.
yes, and all of that. So
Yeah.
it's a hangover from the past, but again, we are moving away from that because of the black consciousness movement and self pride based upon the color and your nationality and so forth. But there are elements of it that you will find implanting in our subconsciousness. So sometimes you see people behave differently depending on the color of your skin, or perhaps where you are from. If you are Chinese looking or Indian looking, or some
Yes,
such
yes.
It's historic and it's still here. And
Understood.
oftentimes it's kind of covered. It's not so obvious at times, but it is there.
I want to bring in Mr. Chung before we head to the break. Mr. Chung, any comments? And in fact, before you comment, sometimes I hear males complaining that they're being left behind and they feel as if all the preferences are being given to the females. So can you flip it and go all the way to the other side? Mr. Chung, any comments?
Yeah, I think it is a well-founded criticism, because what has happened, as has just been said by Wendell, is that because it was so far skewed to discrimination against women, against minorities, then what you found is that there was a lot of affirmative action from governments and groups, organizations, women empowerment and that sort of thing. And then a lot of the focus through official and unofficial sources was to empower these groups that were discriminated against. And then you find that it gets into the culture now, right, of, a lot of preferences being given to them. So people who are traditional, like males and so, feel that, hey, there's not a lot of attention being paid to us. And that is one of the arguments now, have we gone too far, in trying to adapt a lot of these things? I mean, I've heard even persons in religious movements saying, hey, have we changed what the genders are supposed to do in terms of naturally, their duties, that comes naturally from birth, so that argument is there, but it's a delicate balance. I mean, at the end of the day, what we want to do is ensure no one is discriminated against, whether it is, the sex, the gender, the race, whatever. And even in Jamaica, one of the challenges we have is the address where you live. That has been a huge problem for us.
Place of origin.
Yeah, place of origin. You go into an employment establishment and you say, hey, I come from this area, and immediately, persons will be turned up, and some of it might be justified because of the crime.
Yes.
And there's a natural fear, but it's a very valid argument.
People start to wonder if someone related to you, if their name is frequently being called as a police station.
Exactly. So therefore, the argument is, how do you strike that balance between persons naturally trying to protect themselves as a natural instinct, and also the fact that, it is discrimination,
Hold that thought, Dennis Strong, because I think we are already upon a break. Listen, please stay with us. We'll be right back at the Morning Watch.
future, helping you everything that you do. We're in your corner, supporting you. I'm gonna keep my goals on track, keep moving up, no turning back. I got Sagicor Bank, Sagicor in my corner. Nothing's gonna stand up in my way. I'm moving to a brighter day with Sagicor Bank in my corner.
Hey, my peeps, get this on the regular. Your HIV status if you consider. At least if a test once a year. Just 15 minutes and your status clear. Cause it might not show up on your timeline and you learn too late, so you're out of time. A progressive future, mandatory. Really long life, our story. You hear?
Remember, update your status in a real life. Go HIV test today.
Just 15 minutes and your status clear. Really long life, our story. Real long life for say youth, coming from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. We are in the main watch, and we are speaking with Wendell Wilkins, attorney at law, and Dennis Chung, social and financial commentator today. And the topic is understanding the Charter of Rights. We'll be doing this topic for both watches today, and in this first watch, we are looking at the rights to freedom from discrimination on the ground of being male or female, race, place of origin, social class, color, religion, or political opinions. Mr. Chung, you were saying a couple of very interesting things before the break in terms of place of origin. And, you know, as I was pointing out, some persons may be afraid to hire someone from a particular address that is associated with crime, not necessarily because they think you are a criminal, but they might wonder if someone associated with you is, and it creates that level of anxiety for the employer or the person who will supervise you. Any further comments, Mr. Chung, before we look at some of the other types of non-discrimination?
Yeah, I just close by saying it is really a balance, you know. I mean, because persons have a right to protect themselves, you know, and their own interests, but also you don't want to discriminate. So, I mean, a very simple example is, I mean, even your own child growing up in your house. I mean, how do you say to them, hey, you know, other people are living in the house with us, so you have to be careful about the time you're coming in or who you're with. You know, how do you create that balance so that you're protecting everyone? And that's a role that lawyers and governments have. You know, they have to create that balance, you know, between being equitable to everyone, but ensuring that everyone is protected. So the whole thing about a laissez-faire economy, you can't have full freedom in an economy, or else, you know, you have things like price gouging, you know, so you have to have market conditions that protect it also. So that balancing act, that is really the trick, you know,
Yes.
to ensuring that constitutional rights are protected
Yes.
all around.
I remember speaking with an employer, and what she said to me is that when she's firing someone, she can't just fire them like that. She has to do it very diplomatically because of the concern of repercussions in terms of that person who you're firing might be associated with someone who might come back and do something really terrible to them. I tell you, the kind of society we live in now because of crime. That's what she said. I'm only repeating what she said. Mr. Wilkins, some of the other heads of non-discrimination, we're looking at, for example, religion, political opinions, and social class. Before we close this segment, anything you want to say
Yes,
on
on
those?
the matter of religion, I don't think we suffer from any significant problem in that area. Some churches do look out for members of that church in terms of preferences and advantages, and that is expected. If you're a member of a particular church and there's a need, then that need might be fulfilled primarily. So that is part of how organizations operate. But there is a historical problem with one aspect of our religion, which applies to Rastafarians or Rastafari. There has been some historical problems there because we have discriminated, and that is documented, against persons who say and appear or behave as part of that religion. And there has been a problem defining that movement as to whether it is a religion or not. But there has been problems historically in that regard. So the issue is that it is not a homogeneous group. There are persons who appear on the outside to look like or behave as if they are Rastafarian. But the question is, what about the heart? But no doubt, there is a religion called Rastafari, and therefore there ought not to be any discrimination against them. There has been a movement away from that now, but we are still not there as yet. There has been some embracement by reluctant society over time in the music and entertainment area, where many of our musicians either internally or outwardly appear to be part of the Rastafari movement or religion. And there has been some cultural and societal embracement. But there can be detected some discrimination showing sometimes as a remnant from our past, and that needs to be dealt with. On the matter of political opinions now, unfortunately, we live in a politically tribal society, and therefore, if you hold certain political opinions and support a certain party of a certain color, sometimes advantages come to you if that party is in power. If your party, based upon your political opinion, is not in power, then you are at a disadvantage. So the question of discrimination in terms of political opinions manifests itself in that way in the tribal politics. That ought not to be. We're supposed to be moving forward respectfully based upon differences in political opinion, but not to be fighting against each other and quarreling and the matter of the supremacy of the political opinion and therefore the political party. That comes first. And unfortunately, examples are not being set in the way that it ought to be set for non-discrimination and also nation building. Sometimes you look at what is happening in Parliament and how they address each other on the divide, and you are really befuddled and you wonder what kind of example is set. And that it can be tracked back to the question of political opinions that people hold and whether there is at times discrimination in how the political opinion manifests itself practically.
Understood. I'm not sure if we really dealt with social class. I don't know if you want to mention that separately, Mr. Wilkins.
Yes, that is always a feature of our system. Again, from our colonial past, certain stratas exist in the society. So you have the lower class, the middle class, and the upper class, the rich and the poor. And that kind of classification is always with us in our society and other societies. And therefore, we interact with each other individually and sometimes governmentally on the basis of what strata of the society you come from. And Dennis has mentioned that thing about where your address is. That can be a problem.
Yes.
And sometimes how you speak and how you dress can be a problem.
Yes.
So the stratification that we have in society is still a problem and needs to be dealt with.
Yes. Dennis Strong, social class, religion, political opinions before we wrap.
Yeah, I want to throw out a perspective for you. Patrick Hilton, whenever I listen to him, one of the things he always says is strategy. Culture eats strategy every day for lunch, right? And I want to say also that culture eats legislation every day for lunch, right? And the reason I say that is because even though we have these laws on the books, right, I think that the biggest thing that drives this discrimination or no discrimination is culture. So if you look at it, people say, well, the authorities have a role to protect, but the fact that we have a subculture that says it is the desired thing to bleach your skin, right? The culture in itself discriminates against darker skin. The fact that we have a culture that is in advertisements that says, listen, the way for you to get ahead in life is to go up the social ladder. So you get a new car, your house, and you go to this place, and right. And therefore, I want to put it to you that culture and education about culture is also a primary thing. One of the most important things that government need to address. We can't just put legislation in place and not address the culture issue. So you'll see that in many places like the Middle East and China, and so one of the things that they do, and you can argue if it makes sense or not, or if it's right or not, but they ban certain things from entering their market, right? And therefore the intent, I think, for all of that is not to create that culture. So that's a perspective to look at. Why we have the lawyers, why we have the legislators, if we are being influenced by the culture outside that says this is the right thing to do, and people by their behavior, right, is promoting discrimination, then how effective is the legislation? You understand? Hello?
No, I am agreeing with you, Mr. Chung. In fact, Mr. Wilkins, I think what Mr. Chung is pointing out is that it is one thing to have the laws on the books, but you don't want to have laws which are just there on paper, Mr. Wilkins?
Yes, well, that is the problem, that we have things in black and white, but in reality is saying a different thing. So it's always a struggle and sometimes a tension between what is written as the law and what is happening out there in the society as reality. And laws cannot always solve problems. And sometimes we go to the law first, to solve societal problems, and it doesn't work that way. So the point that Dennis is making is well taken.
Understood. Well, in terms of looking forward, 2023, we're in a new year. What in particular do you think we should be seeing as the most challenging thing going forward with these non-discrimination clauses? Starting with you, Mr. Chung, and then Mr. Wilkins. Mr. Chung?
Yeah, well, the thing that we need to focus on, and the most challenging thing, is to understand where do people get their education from. And 70% of people in Jamaica actually get their information and news from social media, and primarily WhatsApp and Facebook. That's what Jamaica is, right? So therefore, instead of just putting out the legislation, the most challenging thing to the authorities is, how am I going to get the message across in terms of, for example, fines? Because a lot of the times we put fines in place, but the way we communicate it, right, people don't hear it. I mean, a lot of people don't know that many people don't look at traditional media, right? So how do we get that change? I mean, we see, for example, even in the United States, that there's a big focus now on social media, because that is what is driving culture. And therefore, I think the biggest challenge in 2023, as we get younger people coming up to take over now, is how do we communicate that message of non-discrimination, even while having the legislation.
I think we have to leave it there, Mr. Chung. I was trying to get another comment from you, Mr. Wilkins, but I think we have to leave it there.
Yeah.
For this particular segment, listeners, please stay with us. We'll be right back in the Morning Watch.
Talk to Jane Bank today
to find out about achieving your own sweet home in 30 days. The time by Jan Bank Mortgage is
7:30. For all your carpet needs, come to the Carpet Store Limited. We do carpet cleaning, installation, custom rugs, and much more. We are the largest distributors of carpets in Jamaica. We also stock a wide variety of area rugs in different styles and sizes, such as wool, jute, and sisal, among others. Follow us on Instagram at thecarpet_store or visit us at 18 Dumbarton Avenue, Kingston 10. You can call us at 876-649-0174. The Carpet Store Limited, because you deserve the best.
Building your house and looking for everything in hardware from ground to roof? Save the hassle. It's Robinson and Sons Hardware, dedicated to giving you the best. Call Robinson and Sons Hardware 876-715-1724 or visit 18 West Palm Avenue, Port Antonio, Portland. If we don't have it, we'll get it for you. Robinson and Sons Hardware, Port Antonio, Portland, dedicated to giving you the best. 876-715-1724.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. Let's take a look now at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. And unfortunately, we already have quite a bit of bad news reported in our various news sources. We have in the Gleaner, Barber charged for double murder at bar on Maxfield Avenue. That's in the Gleaner today. We have in the Observer today, unfortunately, the headline here reads, Mavis Bank farmer killed in $100 dispute. Another in police custody. We have in a bit of sad news to a collision place in Westmoreland, and apparently it was a patrol vehicle, the Jamaica Defense Force, and a water truck, and unfortunately a JDF soldier died, and he has been identified, and his name is Mr. Morris, Giovanni Morris, I believe is his name. Soldier killed in patrol vehicle, water truck collision identified. Those are among the various news that we have in our news sources. Coming up next, of course, we'll read through some of the feedback from our social media question, which is, how much do you know about your rights and freedoms as a Jamaican? If you haven't done so yet, leave your responses in our Facebook or YouTube. Love 101 FM Jamaica live, and also WhatsApp your comments and voice notes to 876-997-3125 using hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll be right back.
Love 101 invites you to listen to Encounter, presented by the Jamaica Association of Full Gospel Churches, Thursdays at 10 p.m. Every first Thursday, listen for words of upliftment from the Lighthouse Assembly with Bishop Rowan Edwards. Every second Thursday at 10 p.m., listen for a word of encouragement from Mojis Ministries International. That's Women of God in Service with Reverend Dr. Elaine Richards. Every third Thursday, receive words of strength and power from Praise Deliverance Ministry with Senior Pastor Fitzroy Carr. And every fourth Thursday, it's words of inspiration from the New United Bible Way Church of God with Reverend Dr. Jasmine Brown. For fifth Thursdays, the Jamaica Association of Full Gospel Churches shares words of hope. That's Encounter, presented by the Jamaica Association of Full Gospel Churches, every Thursday at 10 p.m. right here on the family station, Love 101.
Hey everybody, I'm Ashley.
I'm Jakal.
I'm Victor.
I'm Chantel.
And we are
The Pulse Podcast.
You can find us every Saturday at 7 p.m. on Love 101 FM JA's YouTube channel.
Yes, 7 to 8 p.m. And ensure you follow us on social media, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram.
At the Pulse Podcast JA.
The Pulse Podcast, your weekly source of authentic, Jamaican, faith-based, creative content and edutainment.
About culture, creative expressions and games.
Hey students, we've come a long way, and just like that, we're looking at the new year in 5, 4, 3. Whoa, what a journey 2022 has been. And as we get ready for the new school year and the new year, we're inviting you to a party. It's Vision Board Party for Tuesday, January 3, right out of the blocks for 2023. The beginning of the year is always a time to reflect, rebuild, and make renewed determination to get it right. We want you to join us ready to make your own vision board. Grab some paper, colored paper, and magazine with lots of pictures. Get your glue and markers ready, and let's get this party started. It's Campus Connection Vision Board Party time with me, Jonathan Fletcher, and Anesta Samuels. Tuesday, January 3, 2023. Don't you miss it. Party over here.
Hi Jamaica, my name is Fredrine Simpson, Public Relations Officer.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. Let us now see if Jukal has seen any replies to our social media question. How much do you know about your rights and freedoms as a Jamaican? Jukal, sir.
All right, so I see one here from Kendra. Kendra saying that she knows a little, but she wished she started to learn them little by little, like the national anthem from earlier, from kindergarten. She's saying, and then she says, or is it that they want to continue to manipulate us? A whole lot of things can be mandatory, and why isn't a right rolling across the TV screen every day for 365 days with a question mark? So that is one that I see here. I do see another one from Edna from Mobe. She has a voice note. Let's hear what she is saying.
Good morning, Stokey. Good morning, Jukal. Good morning to the two guests on Morning Watch, Mr. Wilkins, and I don't remember the name of the other guest right now. And to all the Love 101 listeners, Happy New Year to you all. Yes, I think we don't know our rights, and therefore we have been trampled on, is trampled on, and will be trampled on. Sad to say. But the Charter of Rights I heard you mention, most of us don't even know what it is. We don't read it, we don't understand it. So I think more have to be done where our rights is concerned, because we have lost out on a lot of things because we don't know our rights. Have a blessed day.
That was from Edna. Edna from Mobe sent that one in. There's another one. There's one final one. It says, good morning. What about the lack of freedom what about the lack of freedom of speech and the muzzling of the media, or the fear of journalists to really investigate corruption? I'm guessing she was, asking a question based on what the conversation was going to. So yes, those are the responses so far.
Very interesting, Jukal. Very, very interesting. Well, we move right into the second watch. And of course, our guests continue to be Wendell Wilkins, attorney at law, and Dennis Chung, social and financial commentator today. And for this particular segment, we will now look at the whole matter of freedom of movement. That is to say, the right of every Jamaican or every citizen of Jamaica to enter Jamaica, and of every person lawfully in Jamaica to move around freely throughout Jamaica, to reside in any part of Jamaica, and to leave Jamaica. Starting with you, Mr. Wilkins, any comments you'd like to make on, first of all, the right of every citizen of Jamaica to enter Jamaica? Mr. Wilkins?
Yes, this is part and parcel of a fundamental right, which can be encapsulated in the terminology liberty of the subject or liberty of the citizen. That is a basic fundamental right, a most powerful right, a foundational right of the democratic process, the liberty of the subject, which includes moving around. That is to say, coming into the country as a citizen, leaving it, and moving around within the country. Now, the judicial branch of the state, the courts have recognized the liberty of the individual, the citizen, as most fundamental. And the court has said that you can't interfere willy-nilly with that right, the liberty, the movement of the citizen, unless there is justification. And there are some tests that the courts have established that the state, if it is interfering or abrogating such a right, like the right to move around freely, must pass. And those tests are not easily passed. You have to show justification. You have to show that the measure that is being adopted is measured and you're not using a nuclear weapon to solve a problem or a sledgehammer to crack an egg. So there's the question of justification and proportionality and so forth, because these rights are fundamental. The right to move around freely without interference are fundamental and ought not to be interfered with unless there are special circumstances and the laws passed in a special way and applied accordingly. So, as a result, our democratic traditions and our democracy can be protected by the application of the constitutional provisions and how the court has said how you can lawfully interfere with those fundamental rights and diminish them or lessen them or remove them. And therefore, the state has to be very careful in how it proceeds by any law, any measure to limit that most fundamental right of the freedom of movement to enter the country, to move around in the country, or to leave the country.
Interesting that we are looking at this morning because you may be aware that the People's National Party, the main opposition party at this time, they are in the process, they say, of going to court to pursue a declaration of the court on what they describe as back-to-back states of emergency. And to the extent that they seem to be intending to do this, Mr. Wilkins, and you, Mr. Chung, as well, do you regard them testing, so to speak, or wanting to test the extent to which the freedom of movement can be, as it were, I don't want to say, well, to the extent that you can fetter or limit the freedom of movement, if that is what they're also seeking to ask. Mr. Wilkins?
Yes, I am happy to hear that development, that party, the People's National Party, is contemplating going to the court. That should have been done long ago, because if we are serious about crime fighting, which we must be, every man, woman, and child must be a crime fighter. And there's a dispute between two important components in the crime fighting about the use of the state of emergency. That should have been put to a court to resolve long time ago if we are serious about crime fighting. And certainly there is merit in the argument that the use of the state of emergencies on a regular basis must not become a tool of crime fighting.
Hold that thought one moment, Mr. Wilkins, because I think we are now upon a break. Listeners, please stay with us. We'll be right back to the Morning Watch.
Jamaica. My name is Frederian Simpson, Public Relations Officer.
And I am Monique Bowen, media student.
On behalf of our Distinction College family, we would like to thank the entire Jamaica for making us the #1 City and Guilds ABE and CSEC private training provider in Jamaica.
We offer over 70 vocational, professional, and academic programs.
Start online and face-to-face classes in
geriatric, pediatric, psychiatric, and practical nursing, early childhood, childcare, phlebotomy, pharmacy, and medical lab technician,
housekeeping, food preparation, waitering, bartending, travel tourism, plumbing, motor vehicle, electrical installation, AC, cosmetology, security,
customer service receptionist, supervisory, project, HR, and business management, CSEC, CAPE, and many more.
Registered for any program and get City and Girls Math and English classes for free.
Visit us in Kingston, Spanish Town, St. Elizabeth, Ocherias.
Call us 356-4167.
Happy holiday and a prosperous new year.
You're invited to listen to Dollars and Cents every Thursday at 8:16 a.m. We'll give you tips on how to make your money count, how to save, and how to grow your worth. It's all inside Dollars and Cents, brought to you by BPM Financial Limited, taking you higher. That's Dollars and Cents every Thursday at 8:16 a.m. on the family station, Love 101.
Lord Keisha, you hear about the little girl who get shot in the community last week?
What do you mean?
I'm here say things are going to get even crazy, I know, because them boy they smuggling some new gun the other day.
If me could have said something without bad man hear about my name, I would have talked with me know a long time, you know. Because for them foolishness always come back for hurt the innocent people in the community.
But you know, say, them have one program where you can actually give information to the police secretly, you know. Customs join up with Crime Stop and start one campaign named Tell Us. So people can give tips and nobody nothing know say them. Them all give out money if the reward lead to an arrest or them can find the gun them.
Boy, honestly, me kind of afraid, you know. But things can't continue, so. Me ready to tell them when me know.
You're right. We have to put a stop to it.
The Jamaica Customs Agency wants you to tell us what you know. Call Crime Stop at 311 to share information about illegal guns and other contraband coming through our borders. The Jamaica Customs Agency, country above self.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. We are in the second watch. We're speaking to Wendell Wilkins, attorney at law, and Dennis Chung, social and financial commentator, on understanding the Charter of Rights. This is part 2. We have been looking at this topic for both watches, and in part 2, we're looking at the right to freedom of movement. That is to say the right of every citizen of Jamaica to enter Jamaica, and of every person lawfully in Jamaica to move around freely throughout Jamaica, to reside in any part of Jamaica, and to leave Jamaica. Now, Mr. Wilkins, you were commenting on the recent announcement of the opposition party to seek a declaration on the states of emergency, what they call the back-to-back states of emergency. Please continue before we bring in Mr. Chung. Mr. Wilkins.
Yes, what we're saying here is that the Constitution does provide for state of emergency. And it sets out the conditionalities, you know, like earthquake, natural disaster, disease, and so forth. And there are other provisions that say if the criminals affect how the society operates in a large scale basis, there are certain ways that you can implement the state of emergency, but it is structured in a way that you need the cooperation of the opposition or the parliamentarians to extend it. So one therefore has to be very careful how you make use of it. But what I want to say for crime prevention and the restriction on the movement of the citizens, you don't need a state of emergency to do that. If you use the normal police techniques, if you really put that on the resource front burner, that you resource the police properly, use intelligence and intelligence gathering techniques from the citizens and get their cooperation because they trust the security force. And
so, Mr. Wilkins, you're saying that you can, Mr. Wilkins, you're saying that you can restrict freedom of movement using normal police techniques, such as what?
Yes, normal. If you have reasonable suspicion, as the Constitution provides, that somebody is tainted with criminality, they have committed an offense or about to commit it. The Constitution permits you, without the declaration of a state of emergency, to stop that person and interrogate them. That will interfere with their movement. And if there's reasonable suspicion that they're in fact tainted with criminality or some crime, you can take them in and detain them. Constitution provides for that. You don't need a state of emergency to do all of that. And we know by common sense reasoning that if you deploy police and soldiers in a community, along a road, at a gate, the crime must go down. So it is not so much the SOE which is causing the crime to go down, but the fact that you have deployed many policemen and soldiers in a particular hot spot, it must go down.
Very interesting, Mr. Wilkins. I want to bring in Mr. Trump because
so the criminal mind out there, is not afraid of SOE. You can call it EOS, ABC, XYZ. What the criminal mind is afraid of is the concentration of feet and boots, which are either police or soldiers out there.
Understood. I want to bring in Mr. Chung before never enough time on the morning watch, Mr. Wilkins. I want to bring in Mr. Chung. Mr. Chung, the right to freedom of movement, that is to say, the right of every citizen of Jamaica to enter Jamaica, to move around freely throughout Jamaica and to reside in any part of Jamaica and to leave Jamaica. Mr. Chung.
Yeah, I think everybody should have that fundamental right. Every Jamaican should have that fundamental right. It always is a tricky question again. That how far does that right go? Does that right go to the point where you have this right and it is going to affect someone else? So, my view is that as long as it does not impact someone else negatively, then that right should be there. All Jamaicans should be able to enter the country freely. But for example, if there's a pandemic, you might have to restrict it, right? If there is a situation with a terror watch, you might have to restrict it. So there are circumstances where it comes to protecting the greater good, where you might have to restrict it. When you look locally now, the issue of the SOEs, I agree it is not a long-term solution, and I've always maintained that, right? And I think the failure of our parliamentarians to come up with anything beyond that rather than just criticism, right, is really the big issue with that. And you cannot restrict people's movement sustainably with continued SOEs and get a solution to the problem. And therefore, the debate that needs to happen, and I agree with what Wendell has said, that everything that these things must be challenged in court. Why it must be challenged? Because you need to ensure that the government does not run away with its authority, right? And for that reason, I think it's very important. And that's a part of the whole thing about protecting the rights of people, right? That the court is there to say, hey, listen, government, you have overstepped here, right? Or you need to be careful of this. And therefore, the courts is a very important part of ensuring that we maintain constitutional rights, particularly with this one, we're talking about freedom of movement. Now, what we do in terms of when it is right to restrict, right, for the greater good of the country, it is not just a matter of saying that, we can just do this instead, right? Because we have to consider our circumstances as a country. So one of the challenges we have as a country, for example, is that we don't have enough policemen on the ground. Another challenge that we have is that our policemen have been underpaid for a very long time, and a lot of the policemen actually live in the same communities that they're trying to police. right? So applying the Constitution strictly without considering your circumstances that you live in, right, is always going to be a challenge. Now, the government has a right to protect the rights of every citizen. And when it comes back to freedom of movement, I use the example. I was in Qatar and I use that example, right? And people are saying that people in democracies like the Western world have more freedom than persons in countries like Qatar, right? But when I was there was nobody intimidating you on the road, right? Soliciting anything from you. There was no noise there, right? I was traveling a taxi back from one of the matches, and I said to the man, "What's a crime like?" And he said, "No crime, sir." Right? I said, "What you mean?" I mean, I'm not a home murders, a home petty robberies and things. And he says, "No crime, sir." Right? He says, "Those things, the penalties are too severe." Right? So therefore, the question always comes up when we talk about freedom of movement or to do whatever you want. Do we? And I think this is a problem in Jamaica. We, in many respects, because of the breakdown of law and order, we are defending more and more the freedom of people who want to infringe on the rights of others, right? So therefore, that's a very thin line, and that's a debate that will take place. I mean, when I moved west from Qatar, I went to the United States. Immediately, I started hearing sirens and a lot of noise disturbance, and you go onto the news and people were being murdered and, that sort of thing. And then you question yourself, right? So I draw that parallel to say, this is the dilemma that persons in authority have to face, how much do I restrict freedom, right? Or how much do I give freedom? And we have to find that line. The SOEs definitely can't continue, right? We can't have a country like this. But I think a big part of the problem is not even the SOEs, but as ordinary Jamaicans, we are restricted in our freedom of movement from going into certain parts of Jamaica. And that has always been the case with other SOEs. Because of the environment we're in, we are stuck in traveling certain places. There are certain places we cannot go if we want to live there alive. So, that's the question we need to grapple with.
As you mentioned, the whole matter of the greater good. I'm not digressing, but if you had a hurricane, for example, do you think that there should be mandatory evacuation depending on the level of the hurricane threat, or you should let it remain as it currently is? You evacuate if you wish to. Mr.
I think they should have mandatory evacuation for certain places. And why I say that? Because when the catastrophe happens, you're going to be calling on other people to divert resources, right? To actually address that situation. So if someone was going to go and they were going to face,
we have to leave it there this morning, Mr. Chung, because of time. I see where time is upon us. I asked the question because I don't agree, but I just wanted to know what you all think. I am more on the freedom and on the freedom thought line there. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time and for your thoughts, because it's a very interesting discussion we had this morning on the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and I emphasize freedoms. I want to thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again tomorrow as we look at other topical and controversial issues, and of course visit the Love 101 FM YouTube channel and Facebook page for this and all other Love 101 FM programs, and of course download our Love 101 app and stay connected to us, the #1 gospel station in Jamaica, Love 101 FM. This has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer Kathy Gale and to our guests. I am Stokeley Marshall, handing it back to Love in the Morning with Jokal.